What's happening? You know the sound. You know what it is. Boston has entered the chat. I'm George Balekji. She's Annabelle Hasselbeck. We're in the PNC Bank studio. We got an exciting show for you guys today. We're going to take a little preview at Thursday Night Football. Cowboys at Giants in Jersey. Two teams 1-2. Two teams in that division in a big rivalry, just looking to find some winning. We'll also break down the 3-0 teams in the NFL and who we think the best are. And we'll also end this episode with a special interview with Frederick Richard, an Olympic medalist from Stoughton, Mass, just 20 years old, dominated in Paris this past summer. Great dude, great interview. You guys will love that. But first things first, AB, how are we doing today? Good to have you back in the studio.
I'm good. We were just talking about Halloween coming up, so we're brainstorming some Halloween costumes.
September 24th, 25th, and we're talking Halloween.
A little bit, but I'm excited. It's fall. The leaves are changing. Yep. So it's been a good day.
It is. Like, fall came sooner than I wanted it to. Like, I'll never wish away summer. But fall in New England, you know how it is. Fall in Chestnut Hill, leaves changing. It's the best time of year. So yeah, we'll later episode, you guys will have an update on who we're going to be for Halloween. We're just think shopping here right now. First things first, let's get into Thursday Night Football. Cowboys at Giants. Dallas, since winning in week 1, they've lost their last 2 games. They've lost 3 straight at home going into last year's playoffs. While the Giants, week 1, got pummeled by the Vikings, but everyone sees how good that defense is now. Lost week 2 because they didn't have a kicker. Finally got their first dub against the Browns. This is interesting because everyone will say, well, it's Daniel Jones. Like, he stinks. He's been playing better as of late. This Giants team will run the ball, and this Cowboys defense isn't what it once was. And that's the big part of, because of how the Giants want to run the ball, what Daniel Jones can do through the air and passing with Malik Nabers, and this Dallas defense doesn't have it figured out. I actually do like the Giants in this. It sounds crazy to say, but I like the Giants at home.
It sounds a little crazy to say, but this is an opportunity for the Cowboys to get that losing taste out of their mouth, right? And I kind of think that this short week might actually help the Cowboys because you have less time to dwell on what just happened, right?
Yeah.
Losing at home. And so I think this Cowboys team is a better team, and that the Giants are just trying to win their division, right?
Yeah.
So in the Cowboys are like, okay, we need to make a Super Bowl run. Like, this is the only thing people talk about every single year with this team.
And that's with the Cowboys. Like, the talent is there. And that's what holds me up too of Giants have a good defensive line. They went out of character with their new defensive coordinator, blitzing a ton against the Browns. But with those awful offensive line and Deshaun Watson, that's what you do. You blitz them, and it's going to work. CeeDee Lamb's going to should eat this Giants secondary alive. Like, we saw him getting into it with Dak on the sidelines. Targets are coming his way. None of them are happy because even though they got paid, they want to win games and they want to have an impact on the field. This Giants secondary is young, not that talented. They're led by their defensive line with Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence, which is important. But I could see CeeDee going off, and that's where I draw my hesitancy. But I go back we saw Derrick Henry light up this run defense at home. Devin Singletary is a good shifty back. And everything that Brian Dable and Joe Shane invested into their offensive line was to shore that up, run the ball. And Daniel Jones has been efficient his last 2 games. And the difference maker to me is that they can run the ball, and they have Malik Nabers, who's just like a CeeDee Lamb, an elite wide receiver. And again, this Cowboys secondary is banged up. It's just insane that with Micah Parsons, he can be the game wrecker. Like, he can ruin Daniel Jones' day, and that's what I think too as well. Where that's why I go, I like the Giants, but I just feel crazy every time I say it. But I'm trying to get away from the names, and I'm just looking at what I've seen from New York, and that's where my confidence comes in.
Well, the non-negotiable is that the Cowboys have to score touchdowns, and they can't be relying on Brandon Aubrey, right? Like, he's been 10 for 10 with field goals. He's kind of keeping them alive in a sense, but they have to start scoring and finishing their drives, especially with Dak Prescott's offense. And this is a huge point of emphasis for them, right?
Yeah.
They have to do better on offense. They have to come out with a fast start. They can't have penalties, shooting yourselves in the foot, no turnovers. Like, the Cowboys have to come out hot to start this game, or the Giants are going to feel like they're in it.
And that's what's important. It's how do you take out the run game by stopping it? Or for the Cowboys offense, to your point, if they get out to a fast start and before the Giants can blink, they get a few stops just to start the game before the G-men make their adjustments. But if it's 14-0 and you're going, late into the second quarter, then all of a sudden Daniel Jones has to drop back a lot more and throw it. You make them one-dimensional. I mean, that's when Micah Parsons can wake up and he can be the game wrecker. So it is it's finishing drives, of course, and that's double important where you have to help your defense by scoring points, but you also help your defense by taking their run game out of it, because if it's a 2-3 score game, then all of a sudden the Giants have to change their whole demeanor. And I like Daniel Jones and Malik Nabers because of this matchup. I don't like Daniel Jones if he has to throw the ball 35, 40 times. And that's what the Cowboys can do, to your point, if they get out and start scoring.
Well, the Cowboys also, you're either going to go 2-2 or 1-3. And there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And even though outside noise doesn't matter and doesn't really matter to the team, what the media is saying, people are already talking about Bill Belichick maybe being the next Cowboys head coach. Like, it's being thrown around just because they have lost, right? And so this is an opportunity for the Cowboys to just shut that up, cut that, conversation out of the picture, and really just, show that they can make the playoffs.
You hear it too, like Dak Prescott walking off the field after losing, like, jump off if you want, like, jump off the bandwagon, it's fine. It's just interesting how tense that locker room is already. Like, a lot of teams go through slow starts. The NFL, we said on yesterday's episode, it's just so much chaos. Like, I love the chaos we get, but when we get to week 5, 6, 7 and everything's settled and we know who's who and these teams have identity and continuity, like, that's what I'm excited for. But to hear that already, jump off if you want, CeeDee Lamb to be yelling at him on the sideline saying, like, I'm right here, I'm not leaving. Just for them to be going through this, it is the pressure that comes with being in Dallas, with getting paid, with the expectations. That has an effect in that locker room, and that's what I wonder. And at the same time, like, squeaky wheel gets the oil. Like, all right, could we see a 15-target day for CeeDee Lamb where he has 11 catches, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns? And, like, if he does that, he's going to be breaking this Giants defense's back, and then that can open up for Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle, whoever, Deuce Vaughn, just this run game to get going.
No, you're right. There are some hot emotions going on in that Cowboys locker room right now, and it is affecting them on the field. Something that both Dak and CeeDee talked about in their press conferences earlier this week was professionalism. They said the word professionalism a lot, and Dak was speaking in the sense of, like, there's a lot of things that we need to take care of and be more professional with. Knowing your routes, knowing your coverages, knowing your reads, knowing where you're supposed to be. Like, when your quarterback is saying knowing where you're supposed to be, something's not adding up. He said we need to keep our focus and we need to, prioritize what we're doing in our time outside of the building. Yeah. So, like, I'm going to read between the lines. That's controllable. Focusing and knowing, being prepared and having this professionalism. Yes, some of it is body language, how you're carrying yourself, being a Cowboys football player, right? At the same time, he's really talking about, like, we're not prepared enough. We're not locked in off the field, outside of the facility, and that's a huge problem and probably something that's going on in the locker room.
I love that point you made. So what did he list out? He said knowing routes, reads, where you're supposed to be.
He literally said things that, like, are X's and O's.
Yeah.
Knowing your routes, coverages, your reads, knowing where you're supposed to be, keeping your focus. And then this was the big part that I thought was crazy because both Dak and CeeDee mentioned this, like, time away from the building.
Boom.
And CeeDee said, he goes, it comes down to those preparations outside the building, body care, film. Yeah. So it's like, let's read between the lines. Somebody is pissed off at somebody in this offensive room that they're not doing their job and they're not focused and locked in.
I wouldn't think it's CeeDee or Dak. Like, Dak he's a polarizing player across the league. People have their opinions on him. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league still right now. And he can light up any defense. CeeDee's one of the best route runners. I think those are the leaders calling out the rest of the guys on the offense. And they've earned that right. Like, there's a reason they're saying that and speaking through the media. They have a good enough relationship. They would talk about that amongst one another. And you've seen them time and time again how good they are. Like, since they stepped in as rookies, that they bring that approach to it. But yeah, it could be, they have a young left tackle in Tyler Guyton. They have Brandon Cooks, who hasn't been showing up. Maybe it's that backfield of Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott not doing their job as well. Like, when they list that out, I don't think it's pointed at each other, but it is at the rest of the room. I think that's so important for the leaders they've spoken about it behind closed doors. When you say it in a press conference, as you said, I love that you brought that up. That's when the red flag goes up of, like, this is big for the team. And to your point, it's more than 1-3 versus 2-2. There is a big difference, but it is that locker room responding to getting called out by their leaders.
Definitely. And that's not something that just, like, comes up, right? This has definitely been brewing. This is definitely like, okay, I saw so-and-so do this or not do this, right? And so then you lose, and then those things come to the surface, especially on the biggest stages when you're on the Dallas Cowboys.
So you're on Cowboys, I'm on Giants. Nice little head-to-head podcast. I like it.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, basically, yes.
We'll see. It's, again, I don't feel great about it. I know for anyone that bets, the spread is like 5.5 as of the time we're recording this. You get Giants as 5.5 dogs as more of a field goal at home. I think that's a good bet, but I just like the Giants straight up in this one. There's something weird. Daniel Jones has never been good in primetime, though. So, AB, I'm just going to be watching from my couch Thursday, just like, oh, Daniel Jones again. I gave you hope.
He's been playing better.
One thing we didn't bring up, too, it's two quarterbacks that do have something to prove, though. Like Dak with that contract and Daniel Jones that's had his to show I'm not a mistake. The Giants didn't waste their money. I can get the job done. And for Daniel Jones, like that's keeping his job, what he's fighting for.
100%. And everyone's watching, right? This isn't like a 1 p.m. Sunday game. This is Thursday Night Football. Yeah, all eyes are on you.
Yep.
You're either going 2-2 or 1-3. Like we said before, that's a huge difference. You both have playmaking wide receivers. Let's see who can make it happen.
I'm excited. Nabers versus CeeDee Lamb in this one. It's going to be a lot of talent on the field. All right, let's get into the convo of 3-0 teams across the NFL. We kind of hinted towards this with our power rankings, and you did the right thing. You're like, if you're undefeated, you're at the top of mine. I was a little.
You were a little crazy.
Mean. I know. I'm a tough grader, but Bills, Chiefs, Seahawks, Steelers, Vikings, all 3-0. If you thought the Vikings, Steelers, and Seahawks were going to be 3-0, then good for you. No one saw that coming. But what do you make of like this group of 5 teams? Does anyone shock you that's out of these teams remaining that's 3-0?
No, but I will tell you who it's not going to be, who's not going to miss the playoffs, okay? Out of this group, it's not going to be the Chiefs, it's not going to be the Bills, and it's not going to be the Seahawks. So that leaves, we got the Vikings and the Steelers.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the process of elimination that I made there.
It's the Steelers in that conference but I think the Bengals, like that defense won't get sorted out. And the Steelers defense is elite. Justin Fields is getting the job done, protecting the football. This Vikings team is the biggest shocker to me. Like no one saw this defense where they didn't get that much younger up front, but Brian Flores is one of the best DCs in the game. That it is an elite unit. Sam Darnold, can you be a top 12 quarterback and you have the best wide receiver in the league? Like that is a lot, and they run the ball well. The Vikings are the biggest shock to me. But out of those 3 surprise teams, which are Seahawks, Steelers, Vikings, to me, I do like the Vikings the most. I just like what they've built. And especially for them to go, they shut down the Giants. They shut down the Texans. They shut down the 49ers. It's the competition that they beat. Compared to the Steelers is the Falcons before they figured anything out. Broncos with Bo Nix. And the Chargers without Justin Herbert in the second half. The Vikings wins impressed me a lot, especially the last 2 weeks. Like they had C.J. Stroud looking like he had no idea what he was doing. And C.J. Stroud's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Well, the Vikings fans were chanting MVP to Sam Darnold, right?
He's the best quarterback in the league right now.
Right. Who would have thought that was happening? I didn't, right? Yeah. Like I did not think that. And I think a lot of people also didn't think that. So you're right. You're not wrong with the Vikings being a huge surprise. And they're looking really good. It's
going to be exciting if Jordan Love, like he was trending towards playing in week 3. If he comes back and returns, that's a really tough Vikings defense and him coming back with that sprained MCL. But that Vikings-Packers game, that's the one I've circled. And I don't know which way to go. I guess I go Vikings just because that defense is a difference maker to me. But that one's exciting. And Sam Darnold, he dealt with a bruised knee, won't miss the game. The Seahawks are the one that puzzle me, where now I'm being hypocritical. Like, why knock the Steelers? All right, the Seahawks beat the Broncos. The Patriots team, that was a good team. And then they beat the Dolphins, no Tua. But that defense is only allowing 4 yards per play. Geno Smith's had a lot of unlucky interceptions. Like I don't put them on him. He had 2 INTs last week, but like batted balls, drop passes. With what that offense can do, they haven't been healthy, and how the defense holds it down, I really like the Seahawks team.
I really like the Seahawks too, and it's a team that has X factors that you can't really figure out, right? With this new head coach, Mike Macdonald, what he's doing on defense, like you said, he has weapons on defense, and he has a really strong wide receiver group that it doesn't really matter, to your point of, Geno playing well or having those almost interceptions, right? The wide receivers that he has, DK Metcalf, JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigma, Tyler Lockett, who's coming in clutch in these moments, right? Like he has the people that he needs to get the job done.
And Chiefs and the Bills, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. They still have that championship defense. The Bills are the surprise with everything they lost on defense and on their offense as well. And that's the same thing of like, all right, I'm going to grade what your quality of win has been. It was a shootout with the Cardinals. It was the Dolphins where they just don't win at the line of scrimmage. They're bad in the trenches. And that happened before Tua went down. And this is a Jaguars team that's broken. Like speaking of Cowboys maybe looking for a new head coach, Jaguars, same thing. Where that's where the Bills won, I'm puzzled, and I am still a little like skeptic of. But Josh Allen, when he puts on that Superman cape, there's no one more exciting to watch.
There's no one more exciting to watch. And even in the offseason, he was talking to media about, and his coaches, more importantly, about, hey, I'm gonna run the ball less. Like, I'm gonna, protect myself a little bit more. And then, like, first game, boom, not seeing that, right? He's doing these, like, Superman dives into, first downs and end zones. So that is a guy who is really unstoppable right now, and they will do anything to get a Super Bowl. That's
where we look at these and, like, our producer Brendan said, like, all right, who's going to miss the playoffs? I mean, it's tough to say Seahawks because the Cardinals and Rams are still struggling and the Niners are off to a 1-2 start. Like, I try to look division. Like, can they win their division, or who in their division can finish ahead of them, because that can eliminate them from the wild card. The Vikings with the Bears team, like, really far away from actually being in the playoffs, which a lot of people liked. The Packers have been good. Can they keep it up? What is Jordan Love going to be? And, of course, the Lions are the best team. Even at 3-0, that Vikings team puzzles me. It's just because the Packers and the Lions can definitely make the playoffs, but we can see 3 representatives from one division because of the wild card set. I want to say Steelers. I'm just not a believer in them, but the defense is elite. And if the Ravens are the best team in the division on paper and they're 1-2 to start themselves, that's what's tough. Like, it's hard to see any of these 5 miss the postseason.
It's hard, but somebody's got to, right?
I guess.
Maybe. For this conversation, somebody's got to. And I think it's the conversation with the Steelers is, when have we not seen them in the playoffs, right? Like, when you think of the Steelers, you think of, postseason football, right?
And winning seasons.
That's why it's hard for me to get over, taking them out of this playoff run.
Even with the Bills, where we don't know when Tua is going to be back. Like, they could have been pushed out by the Jets and Rodgers and Tua and the Dolphins. With Tua down, we don't know when he returns. The Jets, we'll see if they can sustain their level of play. And then the same thing with the Seahawks. It's looking like it should be a 2-team race between them and the 49ers, but the 49ers haven't been that great. While the NFC is just like a lot of parity, especially in the middle. I don't know. What surprises me, like, we haven't spoken about the Chiefs because what is there to be said about them, right?
We haven't even I don't think we've said Chiefs once this whole time.
We just brushed, it's like championship, it's the Chiefs, Mahomes. Like, Travis Kelce isn't even having an impact on the game yet.
But they've had close games, right? So,
and
like,
they've won them.
And they've won them. So you're saying, they haven't been playing their best and they're still winning. Or, like, hey, you're towing the line. Like, there's kind of 2 ways to look at it. You're towing the line here. When are those mistakes and when are those executions that aren't happening?
Yeah.
When is that going to actually play an effect?
And that's where you think of, like, week 1, when they just outlast the Ravens. Week 2, game-winning drive. DPI call helped them out, get them downfield, which was the right call against the Bengals defense. Game-winning field goal by Harrison Butker. Then same thing, week 3, it's just like the defense has to make a late stand, 4th and inches in their own territory, and they get it done. I like that from a team of winning those tight games, and we haven't seen this Chiefs team get out and running it, and that's where some of the confidence comes from. It's hard for me to pick against them. So, and it's, again, I want to say Steelers, but that defense, it's that defense that does it for me. Can you look at a team and say they miss the playoffs, or you think all 5 make it? And it's like, I don't hate saying that because you get off to a fast start. Teams that start 0-2, 0-3, they're doomed for the most part. But teams that start 3-0, like, there has to be that credit there. They do the work in the beginning. They build up this momentum. And it's how sound these 5 teams have been. That's why I'm not willing to pick against any of them.
That's a strong take, and they'll appreciate that from you. But I think if I had to choose one of these teams that weren't going to make the playoffs, I would take the Vikings to not make the playoffs. And I know you made a strong case for them earlier, but I'm just looking at that division with how good the Lions are, how aggressive they are. The Packers are good. Yeah. They figured it out with Malik Willis, right? But then Jordan Love comes back. They're going to be even better.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm thinking there. And then the Bears. We're not worried about them. So I think because of that competition in the NFC North, I'm going to say the Vikings don't make the playoffs.
How impressive would that be? The Vikings start 3-0, first place in the NFC with the Seahawks.
I don't know if it's impressive. I think it's a horrible thing for their fan base.
It would be. But 18-week season, like, there's so much football left. And as, like, when the Bengals started 0-2 last season, Joe Burrow goes down. But they've started 0-2 and made the playoffs. That's only happened 11% of the time. No 0-3 teams ever made the playoffs since they went to 17 games. These 3-0 teams, they're all stacked. They're all on top of one another. That AFC is packed, and I can see teams making a step forward. But Steelers, Bills, and Chiefs, I think they're all in a good spot. And then the Seahawks and the Vikings, same thing. I'm not willing to pick against any of them. I like you picking out one squad, though. And you're right, though, where you go about it of the Packers will only get better. The fact that if they split a game, if they won one of their 2 games without Jordan Love, that would have been amazing. They won both. like they keep giving him time. That's the most impressive part.
And to go back to the Steelers, they have TJ Watt, right? You have to look at like personnel as well. And
that defense is great.
That defense. And then when you get into the postseason, right, like a lot of factors come in. You're more sore. There might be different injuries. Emotions are hot. There are other factors that come up, and you really are going to lean on your leaders in those moments. And when your leader, especially on defense, is someone like TJ Watt, that's why I'm picking the Steelers to stay in the playoffs.
I like that pick a lot. All right, let's check out the interview with Frederick Richard. We'll leave you guys with this one. He's an Olympic medalist this past summer with Team USA out in Paris. He's a gymnast, just 20 years old, from Stoughton, Mass. Great dude. Check it out. We'll leave you guys with this one on this episode of Boston Center, the Chat. He's Frederick Richard, Olympian medalist with Team USA gymnastics team this past summer out in Paris. Fred, appreciate you taking the time, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. Obviously, New England's my home. In Denver right now and about to do a show, but I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we know Gold Over America tour is taking you all across the country. We'll get into that. We'll get into you growing up in Stoughton and growing up in Massachusetts. I just want to start with, like, almost 2 months removed from Paris. Has that excitement of that experience, that achievement of winning bronze and everything you did with your squad worn off yet? Or is it still just absolute enamored with excitement still?
Yeah, it's hard for it to really fully go away because, I mean, obviously that moment, that experience was amazing. But then the doors that open after that and kind of the new world you're in of kind of all the things that you wanted to do with growing the sport, getting more eyes, getting more opportunities starts to actually happen. So I'm excited about like this next stage, this next level.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I love you bring that up. You go to Frederick Flips on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and you're big on putting as much exposure on men's gymnastics as possible. You mentioned the doors that opened. I mean, what doors have opened for you? Just 20 years old, participated in the Olympics, the youngest member of a U.S. gymnastics team on the men's side since 72. What comes from that after that experience out in Paris?
There's so much. It's just, I'm going to have to start listing off a list, but I guess it starts with number one, like every night we're in an arena with 10,000 plus people and showing off the gymnastics and in our personalities. But then on the content side, the opportunity side, the other pro athletes I'm meeting and connecting with, the other opportunities to work with brands and tell stories and kind of prepare for the next level of, I'm getting very deep into sports media production and trying to start a production company and tell our stories. And there's just a lot of partnerships, a lot of brand opportunities, and a lot of future exposure that's definitely about to come.
No, I love that. For people that may not know your social channels, like you take ownership. You keep saying, I want more people to get into male gymnastics. I want more eyes on it, more exposure, more people to watch, not just the Olympics, but all these meets. When did that start for you? Like, how did your journey begin? And is that something you noticed growing up, being in gyms, that there weren't as many male competitors, maybe not as many black competitors either, and that's something you want to change?
Exactly. I mean, I grew up in the gym, definitely feeling like the odd one out. And I knew what I was doing was very impressive. You know, it's like you're training 4 to 6 hours a day. You're putting in the work. You're becoming a monster. But like, who knows that? Who's seen that? And that's kind of when I got obsessed with like, okay, this sport is amazing. Our story is amazing. We're like very athletic. Like gymnasts do crazy stuff. Who moves their body this way? And it's like, how do we start getting more people to see that? How do I get more people to see my story? And so I got really passionate because when I realized I think I can become an Olympian one day, I can become one of the best in the world, hopefully the best in the world eventually. I want the world to know that, you know, and not just everybody to just keep going on with their lives and not notice it. So I've gotten very passionate about growing the sport and growing the viewership.
Yeah, I love how you do that balance too of the creative TikToks you have, like trying to get into your new Michigan gear or going into those YouTube videos of, hey, I'm bringing Alex Orji and Jaden Bullock in with me, a collegiate wrestler, a collegiate quarterback for the Michigan Wolverines, and I'm going to see how they can hang in the gym. You mentioned that though of, you know, it got to a point you're like, hey, I can be one of the best in the world. Growing up in Stoughton, Massachusetts, how did you get into gymnastics? And then how did it click for you, Fred, that you were like, oh, I can go to college for this, and also I think I could compete on the world stage?
Yeah, so I started gymnastics at 4 years old. My sister's a year older than me, and she was in gymnastics, which a lot of younger girls are in gymnastics, but I'd go to the gym picking her up, and I'd see all these kids flipping, and I'm like really young, and I'm thinking like, I guess this is like the normal, like being upside down and stuff. I should probably start learning how to do it the same way you start learning how to walk. So I'd be like chucking flips out home and stuff, and my parents were like, all right, he's gonna kill himself. We gotta put him in. And so that's how I started, and I loved it. Like from the very beginning, it's like you're just challenging yourself. Can you get it back? Can you add a twist? Can you flip off this 8 foot bar? Can you do these crazy stuff? And it's kind of like ninja training, or like felt like Spider-Man, you know. And I just fell in love with the sport. And then I'd say when I got older, probably about 10 years old, I started realizing like, okay, I might be pretty good at this. I'm not the best, you know. There's a lot of kids way better than me, but I realized, you know, if I work really hard, and I can see the kids that are better than me in my gym, if I just start doing way more than them all the time, I just start climbing, and I'm just leveling up, and I just fell in love with that. And then you realize, you know, you're 14, 15, and the Olympics might be possible if you really give everything every day. That's when the diet changes, the sleep changes, the mindset of trying to become the best in the whole sport.
I love that. You talk about that obsession mindset. What's the sleep like? What's a diet? Let me hear, man. Watch your videos. You're yoked, so I got to hear this. What is that like?
All right, sleep is minimum 8 hours a day. I think no excuses for like 6. And when I was in high school, I was getting like 6 because trying to balance schoolwork. But I realized sleep is best recovery, so that's number one. Diet. It's actually interesting. A lot of people are surprised by my diet. So I don't eat any red meat. I eat just lots of chicken, fish, salmon, all that stuff, but not really any red meat. And then I don't really eat any added sugars. So basically trying to get all natural products and just fuel the body really healthy. But yeah, it makes a big difference because I used to eat terrible when I was younger, and I can feel the difference now, and I'm way healthier, way less injuries. So that's diet. And then gymnastics training is give everything every day, like six hours in gymnastics training, another 2 to 3 in content and in creating and business and all those. And I mean, the goal is to change the sport, so you basically just give everything every day.
Hey, man, you're on the right track. I love that obsessive mindset. You point out, too, the less injuries. What was that like battling through that Achilles injury you had in Paris, but still pushing through and having your floor routine, going through all that? But something where you need so much explosion, obviously, from your feet up, but to get over that Achilles injury you were going through.
Yeah, I think that's like a great test of being one of the best athletes. It's not really about can you, you know, be ready for that competition, or it is about that. It's how do you create a plan to get rid of all your problems while climbing, trying to be in peak shape. So it's like, how am I trying to train in peak shape while not put much stress on my Achilles? That was a hard challenge to figure out. You have to create a whole new training plan, get very creative on how I'm going to do way more, because I still need to do so much to be at peak shape. Way more routines. I basically started using softer landings, seeing my trainer like 2 hours a day and strategizing how to strengthen it, but how to recover it. What's the best recovery techniques with icing, with needling, with cupping, with massaging. And you just have to really push your mind. It's a mental strategy game over physical push your body game.
Yeah, it's definitely a maturation, a marriage of the two. I have to ask, like watching your high bar routine as well, like you mentioned, it's like being a ninja, it's being Spider-Man. I was blown away by the moves you guys do. Is that one of the best feelings when you crush a high bar routine and you absolutely stick the landing and then you hear the whole crowd roar?
Yeah, you can like feel it in your bones, in like your heart. Like you do it, and when you know it's like that was near perfect, that was exactly what we needed to make history, or like this is all that work that you put in the years before amounted to that one routine, and it worked out. I mean, like the satisfaction, and like you just feel like a dog. You're like, okay, I really put on when it matters. Like I'm really proud to be able to say I can do that.
Yeah, and what was the experience like as well? Pommel Horse King, also from Massachusetts. You guys putting on a show and putting the U.S. back on the map in men's gymnastics. How is that overall experience where there's an individual that we talk about a lot, but you all as a team stepping up, shining through, and absolutely crushing the competition as well for the U.S.?
Yeah, it's crazy because it feels, once you're like so driven to this thing that's bigger than you, which is obviously the team and just your country, it's nice because you give everything, and it kind of just like carries you like through that whole competition. It felt like some like a bigger power was doing the routines for us. It's like we did the preparations beforehand, and now you kind of just you represent something bigger than yourself and just let it do the work. It's kind of like it almost feels like the 5 of us are doing the routines together versus just you or everybody in the crowd, your whole family, everybody's doing it with you, and it makes it way easier and more satisfying.
I like how, when we first started talking, you mentioned the doors that open, but you go to Paris, you come back home to Massachusetts. What was that like? You probably leave where people in the gyms throughout Mass and around Stoughton know who you are. Now everyone knows who you are. What was that like coming back home after that Paris experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely what you dream of as a kid. Like, oh, I want to walk down the street and people know who I am and know what I've done. And it's interesting. It's cool to get used to because, people are going to recognize you. And it's awesome the people that were in your life like 5, 10 years ago, like teachers in elementary school or just people like your mailman, people that have just known you, but you disconnected with for a while, but then they see what you were doing back then, which was still gymnastics. They knew you were amazing and going to be something. It kind of all played out right, and they're all just proud of you. And so that's really nice.
And you guys are now going across the country in the Gold Over America tour. You eventually will be in Boston for 2 nights, October 6th and October 7th. They added a date because so many people want those tickets. What does that mean to you, a kid that grew up in Stoughton, Mass, to perform in Gold Over America in TD Garden in Boston, Mass?
I mean, it's huge because I remember being in TD Garden probably about a year ago in the crowd and thinking like, wow, I wonder how it feel to actually be on the court or, be on the stage and everybody's watching you. And then 1 year later, you're in that situation. And it's my state, this is where I grew up. It feels like a definitely just like a full celebration of everything I've done amounted to something, and I'm just thankful that it has.
We're thankful too. And when you go through the Gold Over America tour, as someone that wants to continue to push men's gymnastics on the biggest stage, how important is the fan interaction that people get over this tour for you, where it's not just going to watching a show, which is awesome. It's gymnastics meets a concert. It's amazing. But also for the fans to get up close and get to know you and your fellow, Olympians you're with.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think based on the results from the last shows that we've done, I mean, the fans love it. They really do feel closer and like they know our stories better. And the entertainment we give them on the shows is pretty cool, I will say. But I feel like everybody leaves this place happier, feeling inspired, feeling impressed. And I mean, I'm proud to be part of making that happen.
Man, Fred Richard, appreciate you taking the time. Again, Olympic medalist with the men's gymnastics team for Team USA over Paris. Just 20 years old. You're only getting started, man. I appreciate you taking the time. We look forward to seeing you October 6th and 7th in Boston, Massachusetts at TD Garden. And if they're coming to your city, check it out. Gold Over America Tour. You'll see Fred Richard, Simone Biles, Jordan Childs, and so many more putting on a show. Fred, thanks for taking the time, man. Appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks for having me. See you guys.